Have you ever heard of the shepherd who brought the mighty Roman Republic to its knees? This isn't a myth or a legend. It's the incredible, true story of Viriathus, a man who rose from humble beginnings to become one of Rome's most formidable enemies. In the 2nd century BC, Rome was the undisputed superpower of the Mediterranean, expanding its empire with relentless force. This is the story of a brilliant guerrilla leader who, with a small band of warriors, humiliated the greatest military machine the world had ever seen. How did he do it? And why is his name not as famous as Hannibal or Spartacus? Let's dive into the saga of the Lusitanian hero Viriathus. Our story begins in Lusitania, a land of tough, independent people. Life here was hard, a constant struggle for survival. Viriathus was a product of this environment. He wasn't born into nobility. He was a shepherd, a hunter, and by some accounts, a highwayman. He knew the land like the back of his hand, every valley, every hidden pass, every rocky outcrop. This intimate knowledge of the terrain would become his greatest weapon. He was described as strong, agile, and incredibly resilient, living a simple life and sharing everything with his men. This wasn't a general in a fancy tent. This was a leader who ate what his soldiers ate and slept where they slept. This forged an unbreakable bond of loyalty. His men didn't just follow him, they revered him. The conflict known as the Lusitanian War, or the Fiery War, erupted because of Rome's brutal expansion. The Romans saw Hispania as a land rich in resources, particularly silver, and its people as little more than obstacles. They dealt with local resistance, with treachery and overwhelming force. The turning point came with a horrific act of betrayal. The Roman praetor, Servius Sulpicius, Galba lured thousands of Lusitanians into a trap. Promising them fertile lands, he convinced them to lay down their arms. Once they were defenseless, Galba ordered his legions to slaughter them. It was a massacre. Thousands were killed, and many more were sold into slavery. A few, however, managed to escape. Among them was Viriathus. This act of treachery didn't crush the Lusitanian spirit. It ignited a fire of vengeance, and Viriathus became its flame. The survivors of Galba's massacre rallied around Viriathus. They had lost everything, and they wanted payback. But how could a small band of shepherds and farmers possibly fight the Roman legions? Direct confrontation was suicide. This is where Viriathus's genius truly shines. He didn't play by Rome's rules. He invented a new kind of warfare: guerrilla tactics. The Romans were trained for pitched battles on open plains, where their discipline and formations were unbeatable. Viriathus refused to give them that. Instead, he used hit-and-run attacks, ambushes, and his knowledge of the mountainous terrain to bleed the Romans dry. Imagine a Roman column marching through a narrow gorge. They're confident, disciplined, the best soldiers in the world. Suddenly, from the cliffs above, a shower of rocks and javelins rains down. Before they can even form a defensive line, Lusitanian warriors appear from seemingly nowhere, strike hard and fast, and then vanish back into the hills. This was Viriathus's signature style. He would lure Roman forces into traps, exhaust them with constant skirmishes, and cut off their supply lines. His strategy was simple but devastatingly effective. Strike where they are weak, and disappear when they are strong. He turned Rome's strength, its organized legions, into a weakness. Their heavy armor and slow formations made them clumsy and vulnerable in the rugged landscape that Viriathus called home. For 8 long years, Viriathus led the resistance, and for 8 years, he was undefeated. Rome sent its best generals, one after another, to crush the rebellion, and one after another, they were outsmarted and defeated by the shepherd-turned-in-general. He defeated generals with names like Vitellius, Plautius, and Maximus. One of the most famous encounters was against the consul Quintus Fabius Maximus Aemilianus. Maximus arrived with a fresh army, determined to succeed where others had failed. But Viriathus played a masterful game of cat-and-mouse, wearing down the Roman army until he could trap and defeat it in a decisive battle. He even managed to trap an entire Roman consular army, commanded by Quintus Fabius Maximus, instead of slaughtering them, which he could have easily done. Viriathus showed his statesmanship. He negotiated a peace treaty. This treaty was a monumental achievement. In it, Rome was forced to recognize Viriathus as a friend and ally of the Roman people and acknowledge the sovereignty of the Lusitanian people over their own lands. A shepherd had forced the mighty Roman Republic to the negotiating table and won. It was an unprecedented humiliation for Rome. The Senate, fuming but cornered, ratified the treaty. It seemed that after years of brutal conflict, peace had finally been achieved. Viriathus had secured freedom for his people. But Rome never forgives, and it never forgets. Peace, for them, was just a temporary setback, a chance to regroup and find another way to win. The peace treaty didn't last long. The next Roman consul sent to Hispania, Quintus Avellius Scipio, was furious at the shameful treaty his predecessor had made. He lobbied the Senate in Rome, arguing that the treaty was a disgrace to Roman honor. The Senate, eager to erase the embarrassment, gave Scipio permission to break the treaty and resume the war. Rome's treachery knew no bounds. They had given their word, signed a treaty, and then simply discarded it when it was convenient. Scipio launched a new offensive, but even he found it impossible to defeat Viriathus in open battle. The Lusitanian leader was simply too skilled, his tactics too effective. So, if you can't defeat your enemy on the battlefield, what do? Rome resorted to the one tactic it had left: assassination. Scipio knew he couldn't beat Viriathus with swords, so he decided to use silver. He found 3 of Viriathus's own envoys, men named Odax Ditacus and Minoris, who had been sent to negotiate with the Romans. Scipio offered them immense wealth and power if they would do the unthinkable: murder their own leader. Corrupted by greed, the 3 men agreed. They returned to the Lusitanian camp late at night. Viriathus was known for sleeping in his armor, always ready for an attack. But he had a small vulnerability. His neck was unprotected. The assassins crept into his tent as he slept and slit his throat. They slipped away in the darkness and fled back to the Roman camp to claim their reward. The next morning, the Lusitanian camp awoke to a horrifying discovery. Their leader, their hero, the man who had been invincible in battle for nearly a decade, was dead. The grief and rage were immense. The resistance, which had been built entirely around the singular genius and charisma of Viriathus, began to crumble. Without their leader, the Lusitanians were lost. They tried to continue the fight, but the magic was gone. Soon after, they surrendered to the Romans. As for the assassins, when they went to Scipio to demand their payment, the Roman general reportedly gave them a chilling response: "Rome does not pay traitors." Whether this is true or a later embellishment, it perfectly captures the cynical nature of Roman politics. They had used these men to do their dirty work, and then cast them aside. So, what is the legacy of Viriathus? He was ultimately defeated, not by a legion, but by betrayal. His people were subjugated. So why do we remember him? We remember him because he represents the eternal struggle of the underdog against a powerful empire. For 8 years, a shepherd held off the greatest military power on earth. He became a symbol of resistance, a national hero for modern-day Portugal and Spain, where statues and monuments honor his name. He proved that courage, intelligence, and love for one's homeland can challenge even the mightiest of empires. His story is a powerful reminder that history is not just written by the great kings and emperors, but also by the shepherds and rebels who dared to fight for their freedom. Viriathus may have lost the war, but he won a place in history as the shepherd who made Rome tremble. Thank you for joining me on this journey into the past. If you enjoyed this story, please hit that like button and subscribe for more tales of forgotten heroes and epic battles. Let me know in the comments what you think about Viriathus' story. Was he a hero, or just a rebel? See you in the next video.